Hey guys, this is Kayla with Becky's Graphic Design in Nashville, Tennessee, and today I'm going to explain to you why it is so important to have high-resolution illustrations and photographs when you are attempting to print them, especially in a book design project. So let's have a look at this image on my screen. This image looks perfectly fine as it is right now. However, there is no way I would ever be able to print this photograph at a good resolution. If I print it out, it will look very blurry. Let me show you why. If we zoom in and keep zooming in, we find that we really lose the detail. You can see these ragged, squarish shapes. And if we zoom in far enough, we can even see these blocks and squares now making up the dog instead of nice high-definition hair. If we attempt to print this, it will look even worse than it does right here on my screen. To help me explain, I have brought in a childhood friend, this old video game called Minecraft. To get started, let's talk about pixels. Pixels are the smallest measure of unit on your computer screen, on your TV screen, on your phone screen. When computers were first created, generally there were 72 pixels on a diagonal for every 1 inch of space. This means that every computer monitor generally was divisible by 72. So per every 1 inch was 72 pixels worth of density in that square inch. However, nowadays we have gotten much better at making higher density pixels in monitors and TVs and phones. Let's say that this is an old-fashioned computer monitor. It only has, let's say, just for the sake of argument, 3 pixels high and 5 pixels wide. But then we got better at making smaller pixels. Now we can have a 6 pixel high by maybe 10 or 11 inch wide monitor here. And then we have gotten even better at making even smaller pixels. The more pixels that we can stuff into a screen, the crisper and more high definition that screen will be. Take for an example the new 4 and 8K TVs. These TVs are smashing in an incredible 160 pixels per inch. That is a far cry away from the original 72 pixels per inch. This means that the pixels are so tiny they're almost imperceptible to the eye. They are itty bitty. Have you ever brought your face very close to an old television monitor and you can see the little units of the television? Or perhaps you have taken a video of your television screen and there was a funny stripy effect going across that television screen. That is because your camera is picking up on all of those pixels and attempting to read them as actual lines or units. So this screen is considered a 64K screen, and it is made up of 64 1920 by 1080 screens. And here, if I zoom in, you can actually see the pixels located on this screen as well. Even though when you back away, the screen looks super duper sharp, when you get up close, you can still see those pixels.
You see how thick it is? Look at how thick it is.
Oh, they're actually dots instead of squares.
You see how thick it is?
So let's talk about this image. This image is a 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixel image. Now what happens when we bring this image over to this television screen? For the sake of argument, let's say that this television screen has the same pixel density as this one, meaning that the pixels are the same size. The pixels for this TV and this one are the same size. However, this TV has more pixels because it is bigger. This image is going to display the exact same on both of these TVs. The TV is going to allow some white space around the edge of here because there is no more information for it to show. This image has the same dimensions as this one. That is the limitations of the pixels. Now let's talk about printing. So here we have a very low resolution image of, I think it's a mountain. So yes, it's mountains. On your computer screen, maybe this image wouldn't look so bad. But when we bring this image over here to print it, a printer prints with what is called rosettes, which are basically tiny dots. That is where the term DPI comes from, dots per inch, whereas the technical term for a screen resolution is pixels per inch. Because the printer uses tiny dots to create the images, you need almost double the amount of rosettes to pixels because there's more airspace around those dots than there is squares. So the printer has to use more of these dots. So here is the main difference between print and screen resolutions without getting super far into the technical side behind it. So here is one of the books we have made recently, and here is the same cover on my screen. Now these are about the same size physically, they're about the same height. If I zoom in on my computer screen, I only have to zoom in about 3 times on my camera, 3 times zoom, to start to see those pixels. Now on the other hand, looking at the print book, if I want to see the print rosettes, I'm going to have to zoom in about 8 or 9 times before I'm going to be able to start seeing them on my camera. So just for comparison, the units between the print and the screen, there's about the units that make up the screen version of this are about 9 times bigger than the units that make up the ink for the physical print cover. So just to compare those two, that is basically the difference between pixels and rosettes. Rosettes physically are smaller than pixels. So what happens if we start off with an image that already has a low resolution on your computer screen and then attempt to print it? The computer can't magically redraw the image in a high resolution. It is simply going to take a guess. It is going to attempt to fill in the information. I have a visual for this too. Here is our image. Let's say that we have an image that is 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3 wide. It's a 3 by 3 pixel image. If I try to force my computer to make this image larger, it is going to take the pixels that I have and spread them apart. Then the computer is going to attempt to guess what goes in between these blocks. It's going to fill them in as best it can. So if I'm the computer and I have to do my best guess, maybe I'll fill it in with a white block, or maybe I'll go find a blue block and try that. I'm not really sure what's going to work best. I am just a robot attempting to recreate this image that you're asking me to do. Is this right? I'm not really sure. I'm just a computer making a guess as to how to recreate this image. However, let's say we do this correctly. Let's say we start off with a big image and then go smaller. Now the computer no longer has to guess where to add in pixels. It simply has to reduce and remove pixels as it sees fit. This is much easier for the computer to do, and it is much better at reducing the image than it is creating extra pixels. As we can see, this pattern remains the same as we get smaller. Because we started big to little, there is no issue. To reiterate this problem, let's say that here is our image. We have a stripe of red and a stripe of blue. Now, if I ask the computer to more than double this image, what's going to happen? Here I have a stripe of red and a stripe of blue, but I have to fill in the middle. So what am I to do? Am I going to attempt to fill in the middle with red? Or am I going to fill in the middle with blue? Or am I going to cut it right down the middle and blend them and make purple? That's probably not the right answer there. And that's probably not the right answer either. The proportions aren't correct. So as the computer, my best guess is going to be to blend these colors right down the middle with purple. Of course, to our human eye, this looks completely wrong, but the computer says, it's close enough. I'm not really sure what's supposed to go right in the middle, so I'm just going to blend everything together. Here's our last example. Let's pretend that this is the beautiful image of a single quilt square with these nice sharp edges. But this image is teeny tiny. We want to try to make it bigger for our book, right? So here's what's going to happen if we ask the computer to blow up this image to try to make it significantly larger. The computer is not going to keep the crisp edges. It is going to blur everything as it gets larger. The computer is going to not exactly guess correctly about these lines. It's going to start to blend the blue and the gold into sort of a green color. And it's also going to blend the white and the blue into another in-between color on the edges. We are going to completely lose that sharpness. If we ask the computer to blow our image up even larger, even more distortions will happen. Not only will we see some extra green thrown in, we're going to see some brown, some extra broken up looking blues, and we're going to see even more blending between the blue and the white. So this is why it is always better to start with a good, sharp, high-resolution image and then shrink it down if needed. It is not necessarily possible to take a tiny, teeny tiny image that is only 300 by 300 pixels and attempt to force it to become, let's say, 3000 by 3000 pixels. So much distortion will happen that the image will no longer even be recognizable. When choosing photos, or having photos made, or taking photos, make sure they are done by a professional photographer with a professional camera who can take them at a high resolution that will already include all the pixels you will ever need. So if we come back and look at our dog image, let's find what the actual pixel width and height of this image is. This image is currently 576 by 720 pixels. This is what it looks like on my computer screen. Now, if we took this image and had it printed, it would probably need to be shrunk down to about half this size on a piece of paper in order for it to look even halfway decent. Because remember, if we zoom in, we can see all of the issues that arise from forcing our computer to guess and fill in the blanks and attempt to draw in extra pixels where it doesn't know. Even if we look at this text here, look how fuzzy it is on the edges. But this is a high resolution image. If we zoom in on this one, I have to zoom in almost 300% before I can even see a little bit of distortion. This image would have no trouble at all in being blown up big for a book cover or for a billboard or banner. This image probably also has some distortion in it, but not quite as bad as the dog. Oh yeah, if we zoom in close enough, we can start to see a bit of a square grid pattern here in the trees, where the computer has attempted to blow up the original pixels that were contained in this image. Alright guys, thank you very much. I hope this explanation helps you. And good luck on your search for high resolution images, and I apologize if you realize you now have some that will not work for your print project. But good luck. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.